Hey everyone, my name is Thomas. This is going to be a little bit different of a video than what's typically on my channel, but I just want to talk about the only AI tool you actually need to start building, right? So every AI tool video tells you this one is going to be the best. For example, anti-gravity just came out last week. Everyone's buzzing about it. Everyone's saying how this one's going to be the best. Gemini 3 is a top model. All noise, don't worry about it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show you where to actually start and what to do once you're there. So you've probably bookmarked several different tools, right? There's Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf, Aider, etc. So many you can choose from, so much noise. And then you may have not built anything, or you've built something that's just been AI slop riddled. Well, how do you get out of this loop? So I've largely, like I've mentioned, ignored all of that noise. I picked one tool, got reps, and figured out what actually works. So if you do find this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel and follow me on X. The links will be in the description. So first I want to talk about the tool itself, Claude Code. And this is really just a command line tool from Anthropic. You've probably heard of it. It just runs in your terminal. It is a TUI, or a terminal user interface. I am using Claude Code as my choice, but you could use other off-the-shelf open source projects like Open Code. The principles here will remain the same. So I'm not here to convince you it's the best thing ever. I'm just here to show you to grow with it instead of just throwing random prompts at the wall and hoping something sticks. Because the tool isn't the thing, how you use it is the thing. So we're going to talk about 4 concrete levels here, and please, you do not need to hit all 4 today. Just start at the level 0 and level 1 and work your way up as you become more comfortable with the tool. So the 0th level, as I'm going to call it here, is just use it, with one exception, and I'll get to that in a second. There's no fancy setup, don't focus on MCP servers, don't look into complex configuration, just do /init. So you open up your Claude Code, you run the /init /command, and that will generate a Claude MD file, and this is to help give Claude some sort of baseline for your repository. They run this /command for you, and it'll look all throughout your code base, it'll pull various README files, and try to make sense of what's going on. Just use it as a starting template, but modify it over time to your liking. Then just keep it simple. Write unit tests for this function, explain how this module works, add console.log statements to trace this particular flow as you're debugging. Just become comfortable with the program itself and just getting used to that prompting and flexing that muscle, because that's the biggest thing here, is just trying to work with the tool. The goal at this point should not be productivity, it's just that trust and building those reps. Learn how Claude thinks, where it's strong, where it may start hallucinating. So level 1, you think first, then Claude thinks, okay? Big importance. Do not ask Claude what it thinks until you know what you think. You're asking for a recipe of disaster if you're gonna have Claude try to dream up everything in one shot. So I implore you to understand the acceptance criteria yourself first, navigate the code base, get a feel for it. You can use Claude if you want to do this as well. It can give you a rough plan and try to figure it out. You identify the existing patterns, then bring Claude in with that context. If you ask things like, how should I build this? Of course, you're going to get generic suggestions. Instead, you want to say, here's where the code lives, here's the pattern we use, here's the constraints. And this is something real that it can work with. Then you plan before you execute. So you've done all of your research, you're going to write some sort of plan, and you're going to execute on it. I would say you need to spend 2 to 5 minutes in this plan mode. And this is a distinct mode within Claude Code where you can do a shift tab to enter into it. So this is where you're going to describe the task, let Claude ask clarifying questions, review that said plan, then let it execute after you've hit some sort of confidence within it. Treat Claude like a junior engineer. Obviously it's not, it's brilliant, but you wouldn't let a junior start coding without understanding the ticket first. And I guess you wouldn't really let a senior do this either. So I'm going to quote Dex here because this was a very powerful statement that he mentioned at the AIE conference. And it's, AI cannot replace thinking. It can only amplify the thinking you have done or the lack of thinking you have done, right? So it's either one of the two, and you're going to feel that, especially as you're getting in there. I would say that if you have this plan and then execution model, this will eliminate most of that initial AI slop and friction that you experience if you've tried to use AI tools in the past. And you can probably run with this for a while. Seriously, the pattern got me about 6 to 8 months worth of Claude Code usage without expanding to broader patterns and more in-depth usage. So stick here until you start hitting serious issues like results degrading on longer sessions, Claude forgetting the context, or you notice that it's getting dumber the longer you work within a particular session. When that happens, you know you're ready for level 2. So level 2 is all about respecting the context window, or you can think of this as context engineering. I mean, let's just plain and simple say it. Claude gets dumber the more you shove into the conversation. And it's not just Claude. I'm not poking fun at it. It's just I use Claude Code, so that's top of mind. Any model this happens, you have so much context, it starts saturating that window, and it just leads to poor performance. So this gets into what Dex called the dumb zone. And so after about 40% of the context window is full, you start to see diminishing returns. Obviously, this varies based on what you're asking and what model you're using, but I think this is a pretty good measurement to understand. And yeah, I'm just putting Dex there to credit him. So think everything that's within the context window as you're using Claude. You have things like file searching, code reading, and even just various corrections if it's getting things wrong within its history. It all accumulates, and Claude metaphorically drowns in its own history. So there are 3 easy ways to handle this without getting too complex. And so the first one is compacting early and often. So remember that 40% number? Well, whenever you're using Claude Code, you can enable the status line and you can see how much percentage used of the context you have. And so I would absolutely recommend you do that so you understand it a little bit more as you're using it. So when you're getting full or you're starting to see that 40 to 50% range, that's the clue to go ahead and use /compact. And /compact, as it sounds, will summarize the conversation and start fresh with that summary. You can also pass in additional optional instructions if you want to be very specific on the compaction. The secondary idea is to use subagents. So you spin off separate contexts for research and return just the findings to your main session. And this is as easy as literally asking Claude, hey, I want you to spawn a subagent to go research, etc. It will actually do it, run it in its own contained window, and just report back the findings so it doesn't pollute the context window of your main agent. Lastly, I want to talk about writing the handoff doc. So before ending a session, have Claude write what it did, what's left, and what decisions were made. And this is assuming you haven't used the compaction or you haven't used subagents that much, or maybe you have and you still want to keep that context whenever you start a new conversation. But just remember, this handoff doc becomes very handy to leverage. So finally, there's level 3, and this is where you get to do the fun stuff, at least in my opinion, the fun stuff. So automating your workflows. This is where things like / commands come in. And these can be thought of as custom commands that can encode entire workflows. So just off the cuff examples here, you can do a /PR review. Maybe you want to encode very specific criteria that goes outside of just the standard formatting and linting and language server protocol stuff, right? The next thing we want to talk about is fix tests. If you want to have Claude run tests, get failures, and fix them automatically, and even add new tests to it and do that feedback loop over and over again, you could do this through a / command. There's also this idea of just creating PRs or making Jira tickets or anything of that sort as well. You can just run a quick / command, give it some optional parameters, specify some specific tools that it can use within it, and let it ride. This is also where I want to talk about MCP servers a little bit. I would say at this point, you've graduated to be able to use them responsibly. So you can hook into external tools like pulling tickets from Jira, checking alerts in Datadog, or even posting messages to Slack. Claude effectively becomes the glue between your tools. Keep in mind though, MCP servers load up your context with so many tools of like schemas and inputs and descriptions of these tools. They can take up almost up to the 40% mark if you're not too careful, just with tool definitions alone. So just be careful with MCP servers. There's also this idea of Claude skills. This is where you can package scripts and documents and custom instructions together as reusable capabilities. In short, think of a / command as just one single file that you put all the instructions in, and then think of skills as a folder with many instruction documents and or scripts and or other type of resources. And you can share those out amongst your team. You could even build an entire library of them. So at this point, you've hit level 4 and you've realized the real skill isn't prompting, it's judgment. You want to know when to plan versus just ask it for a simple one-shot task, when to start fresh versus keep going, when Claude is right versus just being stupid or confidently wrong, when you need to think harder first. And this just takes reps. It's okay. You're going to over-engineer a button change. You're going to underplan something complex. That's just the process. But the point is, you're going to pick one tool, you're going to get the reps, and you're going to calibrate. If you're going to take one thing away from this talk, it's that. So to conclude, here's the path again. The first step should just be starting with Claude Code, bare bones, and then running some sort of introductory command like /init. Then you should get into thinking first, planning with Claude, and then executing with Claude. Then you're going to get into managing your context window and all the different ways of doing that. And there are many other ways of doing that, by the way. I've barely touched on it. Then you're going to get into the idea of how to automate your workflows and starting to use things like MCPs. So what's next, right? There's plenty more you can do with deep customizations of Claude.md. You can build custom skills for your orgs if you want to explore that. You can even do things like full software development lifecycle integration. For example, Claude Code actually has a GitHub action that will run on PRs automatically. You can have it do things for you. You can also look into things that Dex's team does with the research plan execute model, where they have separate / commands to automate this entire process. Point is, though, none of that matters if you skip levels 0 through 1. Stop researching, pick a tool, and just start building. So thank you everyone for watching. If you haven't already, once again, please subscribe and follow me on X. That link will be in the description. Thank you so much. Hopefully you learned something from this video. Peace out, everyone.